I'm Rob.
And I'm Nate.
Welcome back to this week's episode of Rob and Nate Record a Podcast.
And this is our second week in Billy Wilder month. We will be talking about the 1959 film Witness for the Prosecution. 1957 film. My brain just kept wanting to call it 59. But anyway, we will be talking about said film. But prior to doing that, I wanted to give kind of a brief walkthrough of Wilder's filmography between the last film we saw, which was Sunset Boulevard, and this movie. So Sunset Boulevard was released in 1950. Wilder followed that up in 1951 with the film Ace in the Hole. Ace in the Hole is a film about, stars Kirk Douglas as a reporter who had once been with very prestigious newspapers, but he was a difficult chap, and he basically worked his way down market until he's in this small newspaper in New Mexico. And there is a man who is in a cave who's hunting for like Indian artifacts, and there's a cave-in, and he's trapped. And so this works out for Kirk Douglas because he can report this story, but he realizes, oh, they're going to get him out too quick. We need to milk this thing. And so he basically conspires to keep the man stuck down in the cave for longer so that he can get more mileage out of the story, and it doesn't end well. It's a very cynical film. Some people accuse Sunset Boulevard of being a cynical film. This film is much more cynical. Like, audiences were ready for Sunset Boulevard, but they did not particularly care for Ace in the Hole, which now considered something of a classic, but was not well received at the time. So he made Stalag 17 in 1953, again with William Holden. This movie is essentially Hogan's Heroes before Hogan's Heroes. It won William Holden his Oscar for Best Actor. In 1954, he followed it up with Sabrina, again with Holden, Audrey Hepburn, and Humphrey Bogart, and one of the more romantic, iconic romance films. Then The 7-Year Itch with Marilyn Monroe in 1955. And 1957, I consider to be kind of his year of the film bucket lists. He made 3 films that came out in 1957. One was Love in the Afternoon, which is a romance with Gary Cooper and Audrey Hepburn set in France. He made The Spirit of St. Louis, his biopic of Charles Lindbergh, which is a very un-Wilder-like film. It stars Jimmy Stewart as Charles Lindbergh, even though at this point Jimmy Stewart was like twice the age Charles Lindbergh was when he made the solo flight. And then he made this film, Witness for the Prosecution, which is based not on a novel by Agatha Christie, but rather on a stage play. We're going to have a fair amount, I think, to say about it. Coming into this film...
Well, I think we should start off by acknowledging that this podcast, like always, is spoiler heavy.
Yeah.
So Nate and I will be violating the oath given at the close of the movie.
At the close of the film, there's a narration. Not something you heard a lot, where it basically told the audience, don't spoil the ending for your friends who haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
I mean, it actually asked them... I mean, other than Psycho is the other film that famously told audiences, don't spoil it.
So yeah, let's talk about this film. It's, like you said, it's based on an Agatha Christie stage play. You can see the common Agatha Christie twists. Mm-hmm. I've now read quite a bit of Agatha Christie.
So I wouldn't imagine a lot surprised you too much in this film if you're familiar with the way she works.
Only slightly. There was a lot of things in this film that I saw coming, not necessarily the exact means. And then the actual final twist I hadn't seen. Agatha Christie tends to not make the triple twist in most of her novels.
I think this is a quadruple twist, and we'll talk about that in more detail when we get there.
So,
but you came in basically did you even know it was an Agatha Christie story?
I didn't. So, I mean, you had told me we were going to watch this, but at this point, after week 1 of Billy Wilder month, I decided that I was just going to be going to these blind through the rest of these. I have a feeling I'll be watching more Billy Wilder in the future, but I decided for the purpose of the podcast this month that I would go blind into these episodes.
Working out.
Yeah. So I mean, all I did was at the start of the movie was I wrote down a couple of the starring names, just for reference, but that's it. So,
well, we'll talk a little bit about the plot. So the plot is about, well, I guess we should probably talk about the cast. Really, you have to talk about the cast to talk about the plot. So the main character is Sir Wilfrid Roberts, played by Charles Laughton. Did you know Charles Laughton? Did you know anything about Charles Laughton going into this?
I think I've seen him in 1 or 2 other films, but I did not know a lot about him.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah.
He is supremely entertaining in this film. And he is perhaps best known for a role he played in the 30s. He played Captain Bligh in the mid-1930s production of Mutiny on the Bounty, opposite Clark Gable.
Yeah.
A very iconic role of the nasty captain. And his wife Elsa Lanchester, who plays his nurse in this film. So in this film, Lawton's character is a very prestigious lawyer who's had a heart attack and is just getting out of the hospital and is supposed to keep a low-stress environment.
A barrister,
A barrister, yes.
Not a solicitor,
yes.
A barrister.
Barrister is the lawyer,
trial
lawyer, as opposed to the lawyer that can speak in court, basically. So his nurse is played by his real-life wife, and they have a wonderful comic thing going between the two of them.
I as I watched this, and you'd mentioned that to me, in my head I kind of had this entertaining scenario of, they said, okay, for the filming of this movie, let's just constantly be in an argument. You know, and it was fun because they could argue on the set without actually being in a fight in real life. And like, you know, when they left the set, they could be like, wasn't that fun to pretend like we were fighting? Now let's go home happy.
So Elsa Lanchester has a particular role that she's most famous for. Are you aware of what that role is?
No.
It's also from the 30s. It's also very iconic. She was the Bride of Frankenstein.
Oh, really? Wow. Yeah.
Also, to give a little more context to this marriage, while they were married for 30 years, 20-something years, until he died in the early 60s, Lawton was gay.
Really?
Yeah. And so she was fully aware of this. It was kind of a marriage for show, though they appear to be quite affectionate to each other. I'm sure they really liked each other if they were married, but it was one of those go along to get along. I'm not positive about Lancashire's sexuality herself. I think she was straight. But yeah, it's interesting. It adds a little extra layer. I didn't want to spoil that and have that taint your viewing of the film, but I did think it was worth knowing going in that this is a husband and wife kind of ribbing each other. So anyway, he comes back to his office, and his apartment, it's a townhouse, is directly above his law office. And he is very quickly visited by a friend of his, a fellow lawyer played by Henry Daniell, who's a super prolific actor. He was in films for forever, especially in the 50s. He was in an awful lot of science fiction films. He looks like the scientist in a 1950s science fiction film. But he is a solicitor named Mayhew, and he brings Sir Robert a case of a man named Leonard Vole, played by Tyrone Power, who has been accused, or is shortly to be accused at the point they go to visit him, of the murder of an elderly acquaintance, Emily French, played by Norma Varden, who was brutally murdered in her home. And it turns out she was a wealthy widow, and it turns out that she left quite a sizable sum of money to her friend, Leonard Vole, who she'd only known for a matter of months, but who had spent a lot of time with her and really charmed her. You know, she was a lonely lady and didn't have any family, and so it was kind of perfect. And when Vole first finds out about this, he's like, oh, that's great. Then he's like, oh, that doesn't look good for me, does it? It looks like I got a motive for committing this murder. And so even though his nurse and the doctors don't want Roberts to take this case, he ultimately has to. He can't not, because it's just too intriguing, especially after he meets Mr. Vole's wife, Christine, played by the German actress Marlene Dietrich.
Yep.
Marlene Dietrich. Well, I better go back to Power for a little bit. So Tyrone Power, not a great actor. He's good in this, though. This is kind of rises to the high end, I think, of his abilities.
It doesn't seem like it would be overly taxing, though, either, for that character.
He was a leading man at 20th Century Fox in the late 30s, early 40s, often teamed with the actress Linda Darnell. There's a scene in the film where, in flashback, Tyrone Power goes to see a movie and runs into the widow who eventually dies. Who he's already met at a store, at a women's hat store. They have this kind of meet-cute moment about him encouraging her to buy this really ugly hat just to as a treat to herself. But the movie that they run into each other in is a Jesse James film. Tyrone Power played Jesse James in the 1939 film Jesse James. Again, he often played opposite the actress Linda Darnell. Linda Darnell would die tragically at the age of 41 in a house fire. And Tyrone Power would die about a year after this film was made. He'd have a heart attack while making a film in Spain called Solomon and Sheba. So this was the last film he made to be released before his death.
Yeah, like I said, it doesn't seem as an overly taxing role for him. Marlene Dietrich's role was far more taxing.
Far more taxing, and has more elements to it than might appear to be there at the very beginning. Dietrich is a very interesting lady, 1901 through 1992.
Yeah.
She was born in Germany, had a successful film career there, and eventually migrated to the United States. She was anti-Hitler before it was cool to be anti-Hitler. So the character played by Diane Kruger in *Inglourious Bastards* is modeled a little bit off of her. Dietrich has a very definite persona, which they exploit here. She was known for her legs, and there's a whole scene about her legs in the film. She's an interesting character. She was also known for, in addition to her acting, her singing, but also to her storied romances. She is rumored to have had affairs with everyone from the likes of the French leading man Jean Gabin, to American reporter Edward R. Murrow, to General George S. Patton.
Wow.
And a bunch of women.
Yeah.
So she was all over the place. Really a kind
prolific
of a
lover,
prolific lover and a bit of a sex symbol, giving a really solid performance in this film, playing all sorts of different angles on this character.
Yeah.
So that you don't really know what to make of her through much of the film.
Her character was great. Might be a little bit of a misnomer just to refer to it as a character, but
yeah. This was the courtroom film, really the only courtroom film that Billy Wilder made. As I said earlier, I thought 1957 was his year of movie-making bucket list. So he makes the biopic about Lindbergh, and is going to make a courtroom movie, an English courtroom movie. It wasn't English.
Well, it'd be easy to take an Agatha Christie, to adapt anything Agatha Christie into a movie is not overly taxing. Yeah. Her novels, and I mean, I haven't read many of her stage plays or anything like that, but her novels are not overly long, so to try and take something she's made and adapt it to the screen is not overly taxing or overly difficult to do. So, yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about this film, Wilder's courtroom film, and compare it to Alfred Hitchcock's courtroom film. So Alfred Hitchcock made a courtroom film in the late 40s called The Paradigm Case. The Paradigm Case is based on the novel. It was a film that Hitchcock made when he was under contract with David O. Selznick. It was not a film he chose to make. It was not a film he wanted to make. He disagreed with a lot of the decisions in the way the film was made. He disagreed with the casting. Gregory Peck played the lead in that film. Hitchcock liked Gregory Peck. He'd made a film with him before, but did not feel that Gregory Peck was right to play an English lawyer. That film is hard to come by for a reason, because it's not good.
Yeah.
It's one of his worst. The only one I've heard of that's reportedly worse is a film called Under Capricorn, which is even harder to find. That just did not work at all, even though Hitchcock definitely would have been up to that. And I guess he had said in memoirs and interviews about things he would have done differently if he had been given complete control to make the movie. They also hacked like 15, 20 minutes off of it in its original release, and you wonder if that extra time would have made the Paradigm Case work differently. But it's interesting that film just completely failed, where this film, I think, completely works. It's wonderfully paced. It's got a nice balance of the drama and the mystery with the humor. It is, even though there's a fair amount of comedy in it, I would call it a drama. And it's the last drama that Billy Wilder would make until Fedora in the mid-1970s.
Wow.
So for the early part of his career as a director, he would go back and forth, even though as a writer he was principally a comedy writer. As a director, he would go back and forth between genres up until this film, and then he just started to kind of laser in on the comedy, really, for the rest of his career.
Yeah.
But this movie shows he could do drama quite well.
Well, and it layers in a fair amount of comedy. I mean, the opening dialogue of this movie is quite smart, and it's hilarious.
I am constantly surprised that women's hats don't provoke more murders is one of a number of great lines in the film, principally those delivered by Sir Wilfrid.
I also really enjoyed the dialogue between Sir Wilfrid Roberts and Inspector Hearn when they first come to the office to arrest Leonard Vole. He offers, Wilfrid Roberts has just gotten home from the hospital. They're taking everything away from him, his liquor, his cigars, all this type of stuff. And Mayhew is in his office and has a couple cigars in his pocket, and Sir Roberts has smoked one already, and offers the second one to Inspector Hearn, and takes it from Mayhew's pocket. It seems as though he's going to hand it over to Inspector Hearn. after offering it to him. And as Inspector Hearn goes to take it, he goes, "Wait a minute, I don't want to be accused of bribing you. I can't give you this." And, slides it back into his own pocket. Yeah. And then there's this thing where he proceeds to cover it with his handkerchief so that his nurse won't take it away from him. And that's
a recurring gag.
That dialogue was smart and really funny.
And fast-paced. A lot of this is pretty fast-paced. But the recurring gag between him and his nurse, who has realized from working with him at the hospital before that he's always trying to sneak liquor and cigars.
Yeah.
And so he has to outsmart her. In addition to plotting this complicated defense, he is also constantly plotting ways to get himself bourbon and cigars throughout the film.
Yep.
And a wonderful arc in it is the fact that eventually the nurse basically decides to let him.
Just caves to it.
Caves to him. Just says, you know what? He needs this. Yeah. I'm going to let him have it.
Clearly it's working.
Yeah. So the whole case hinges on an alibi for Mr. Vole.
And the only person who can provide this alibi is his wife, Christine.
So he was visiting with the old lady, says that he went home around the same time he conveniently cut his hand. And
specifically, he arrived home at precisely 9:25.
Yeah. And the murder would have happened
9:26.
9:26. Okay. And then the body was found a little after 10, if I remember.
No, the body 11. Was discovered at 9:26. No, that's when she got home.
No, she went home. So the maid, the live-in housekeeper, went home, was visiting her niece a couple blocks away, had to go back to the home to get like a pattern or something.
Yeah.
To bring back her.
That was in the 7 o'clock hour.
Her mistress and Vole laughing and talking in the other room and left. I thought that was closer to 9, and then she came back.
No, she left at 7. She came home at precisely 9:26, which is why his arriving home at 9:25 would have precluded him from having been able to commit the murder. She arrives home at 9:26 and discovers the body.
Mm. And so that's really damning for Vole. And he says, "Well, my wife saw me," and the lawyers, Sir Wilford and Mayhew, are like, "Well, that's not the best alibi because this is an invested witness, not an impartial witness. But we'll take what we got." But she surprises everyone. Well, at first, when they first meet her, she's kind of cagey.
Yeah.
And he knows there's something up with this.
Well, and he's interviewing her, and she says, that's what he told you? Okay, that's what I'll testify to, and I'll be convincing.
Yeah, and she's like, he just knows something's up with her, and then, to the surprise of the court, but presumably not to the audience because it's the title of the film, she shows up as a witness for the prosecution last minute, kind of a surprise witness. They thought they were going to call her to defend him, They
had planned on not calling her.
They planned on not calling her because they didn't know how well she'd hold up.
Yeah.
But they were really surprised that she ended up as a prosecution witness.
Well, and she testifies that he didn't get home at 9:25, that he arrived home at 10 after 10, that he'd asked her to examine the sleeves of his coat, and it had blood on it, so he instructed her to wash it, and this and that and the other.
And that he had told her that I've killed her.
Yeah.
It didn't say the name, but it was implied who it was. And so she testifies and completely floors the defense and apparently floors her husband in the, what's that called, where the defense sits?
I don't know what they call it in the British thing, but yeah, in that box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it necessitates basically, they don't know what to do after the trial that day. And then they get a phone call from a woman who says, "Meet me at the railway station, and I've got some information that's going to turn this case around for you."
Then proceeds to bargain over the cost of these letters.
Yeah, these love letters between Christine and a mysterious Max, who she was apparently having an affair with. This Cockney woman who says that she is doing this because Max was her lover, and Christine stole him away, and she wants revenge.
And conveniently, they're meeting at the train minutes before they're meeting at the bar in the train station moments before her train is supposed to leave. So as they're examining the letters and
she
proceed to want to try and ask her who Max is, they see her go out the door and she's on her train and gone before they could chase her down. So,
but they have this evidence. They go into court the next day. They call Christine. They're thinking, everybody thought you're going to come in, you'll give your closing arguments, but it's like, no, I have one more witness that I need to recall.
Yeah.
And she just collapses under this examination and eventually is more or less forced to say, yes, I wrote those letters.
Which is true.
Which is true. which means that Leonard Vole gets scot-free.
Gets acquitted.
Which leads us to the quadruple twist at the end.
Now, the first time that you saw this, when did you see The Mistress?
You know, I don't know when I saw The Mistress. They had definitely set her up because she's this...
She's sitting right behind Miss Plimsoll,
yeah,
the nurse, the entire trial, right behind, or offset just across the aisle.
So there's this when they're questioning Tyrone Power. One of the things they bring up is that you were seen with this clinging brunette at a travel agency a week before talking about expensive cruises. You obviously knew you were getting this money. It's like, no, I didn't. I was in the bar and I met this girl and I wanted to impress her. And so we went into the travel agency and I was asking about the big cruises. But I was just having a little fun. But nope.
Well, and right as soon as that happens, there's a shot back to the audience, or to the crowd in the courtroom, and sitting right behind Miss Plimsoll is a crying brunette.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, who seems very invested in the trial.
Yeah.
And there's a number of little clues they drop about this that's not necessarily super clear until the end. But yeah, I don't know when I saw that. I was going to throw this back to you. When did you figure out that was Marlene Dietrich playing the Cockney gal?
Not until she revealed it.
Yeah, me neither.
I saw the twist coming. You expect a twist in anything from Agatha Christie. So as soon as I spotted the brunette sitting behind Miss Plimsoll, I was like, oh, I know where this is going. Mm-hmm. And I thought I knew where it was, and so I quit looking for any further twists.
Yeah.
I knew there would be twists coming and how they'd get him off, things of that nature. And there are twists there. They were the types of twists that I expected. I didn't see the next twist coming.
Yeah. So I want to talk about I think there's 4 twists in the post one. So she gets them off.
And I called it a triple twist, which is why Nate wants to
gets them off. So twist number 1, I guess, is when she gets them off. Actually, it's after they gets them off, where she's talking. So there's big crowds that are obviously angry at her, and so she is led back into the courtroom to wait for the crowds to dissipate. And Charles Laughton is in there, and so they strike up a conversation. And she basically tells him that she was kind of a double agent, that she made this whole story up, including the forged letters, to appear guilty to get him off.
If she testified on behalf of the defense, that no one would have believed her. So she needed to testify for the prosecution and then be impeached in order to be believed.
Actually, I think there might be 5 twists there. So it says I was lying about that. This was all a setup. That I impersonated the woman you met at the bar, and that I knew he was guilty. Says he was guilty.
But it's okay because I loved him.
Because I loved him. Then, once this has all been laid out on the floor, Tyrone Power comes back, and you find out that she was seeing the brunette up in the gallery. So it's 2 timing. And then it makes Marlene Dietrich so angry that she stabs and murders her husband there in the courtroom. 5 twists in the last 5 minutes. I counted that as 3.
I counted the Marlene Dietrich twist, her impersonating the Cockney woman, the mistress actually existing, and then the murder. I counted that as the triple twist, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot at the end.
To unravel that quickly, And it kind of sets it up, because as soon as the verdict comes in, Sir Wilfrid Roberts, he's talking to his counterpart and says, I'm not questioning what the verdict will be. I'm questioning whether I did the right thing.
He basically says something was up and it was bothering him and he couldn't figure out what it was.
Yeah.
And then it ends with him basically saying, I had begged and pleaded with my doctors that they'll let me take this case if I go on vacation to Bermuda immediately afterwards and take a long rest. But at the end, even his nurse is like, send the luggage back to the place. We cancel the reservations. He's taking this case.
As he starts to walk away, she says he's left his thermos on the bench, and she says, "Don't forget your brandy." Yeah. Admitting that she's known all along that he's not been drinking his his lukewarm cocoa.
And they walk out arm in arm after belittling each other through the entire film.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful little ending.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a good film. When did you see this first?
2007.
How many times have you seen this?
Possibly, actually, I think I saw it once before 2007 because I got a Billy Wilder DVD collection, and I think I reviewed all those films after I got it, even the ones I'd seen before. I think I probably first saw it around 2004, 2005, because I tend to remember that I got it from the library at Boise State University. And then I got my own copy, and I probably watched it a couple times, and I would think this is probably the fourth or fifth time I've seen it.
Yeah, which is pretty uncommon from Nate. And going into this, having heard that Nate had seen this 5 times, I knew, okay, there's something to expect here. So Nate doesn't watch very many films 5 times.
No.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a fun film. What would you rate it?
I would give this 3 stars on the 4-star scale, and on the 10-star scale, this is a pretty solid 8.
I would agree with you on the 8. I would give that on the 10-star scale, and I would give it 3.5 stars on the 4-star scale.
Yeah. Interestingly, this was nominated for 6 Oscars. Did you know that before this?
If I did, I had forgotten.
So it's 6 Oscar nominations. It was nominated for Best Picture, Best Actor in a Leading Role, Best Actress in a Supporting Role,
for Elsa Lanchester,
Best Director for Billy Wilder, Best Sound Recording, and Best Film Editing, though it won none of these.
Yeah.
It won some Golden Globes and some other awards, but none of the Oscars that it was nominated for. But for a film to be nominated for 6 Oscars is still not particularly common.
Now, you usually bring this point up, but I'm going to bring it up this time. How do you think this film did at the box office?
I actually didn't look at that yet. How did it do?
It did very well. It was made for $2 million, and it brought in $9 million.
Nice.
Which is a very healthy return on investment.
Yeah.
This is a well-regarded film. I was looking at the review I wrote of it in 2007, and I mentioned that at that time, it was like 160-something on the IMDb Top 150. So it's well-regarded. It's a solid film. I would highly recommend it.
Yeah, I would too. I had not looked at the rating of this, even though I have, we tend to look at IMDb while recording this. I'd intentionally avoided looking at its rating on IMDb, but it does get an aggregate score on IMDb of 8.4.
Yeah,
so
very solid stuff.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, this was quite a fun film. So,
well, hopefully we have more fun next week as we continue Billy Wilder Month. Until then, I'm Nate.
And I'm Rob, and this has been Rob and Nate Record a Podcast. Sweet, that went pretty well. I didn't look at any of the trivia stuff, which is where I usually spend a little time. Let's see if there was anything interesting. Oh, apparently Charles Laughton was considered a delight to work with in this film, which was unusual for him.
He is fun. He's worth seeing more Charles Laughton films.
Alfred Hitchcock said many times, people have told me how much they enjoyed Witness for the Prosecution. They thought it was my film instead of Billy Wilder's. And Wilder told me people asked him about the Paradigm case thinking he had done it.
That's funny.
At previews, audience members received and were asked to sign cards that read, "I solemnly swear I will not reveal the ending of Witness for the Prosecution."
He was also, Laughton was also the Hunchback of Notre Dame in 39, and he's very good at it.
Laughton was?
Yeah. Charles Laughton directed one movie.
Yeah.
1955's The Night of the Hunter, which is great.
Yeah.
And it's like, we didn't need to make another one. It's like, I want to direct a film. You make one great film. There's no need to do it again.
Yeah.
He's not even in it. It's entirely behind the camera.
Yeah. When the film was released, Agatha Christie said it was the only movie based on one of her stories that she had actually liked.
Oh.
Later, after Murder on the Orient Express, the 1974 version was filmed, she said that she liked that one as well. So apparently only like 2 of the film adaptations of her stories. In order to show just one of Marlene Dietrich's famous legs, an entire scene was written that required 145 extras, 38 stuntmen, and $90,000. That would have been hilarious to have in there.
That is funny. They literally just they shoehorned that in.
Yeah.
To get a leg in.
Yep. Billy Wilder only allowed the cast and crew to view an abridged version of the script that was missing the final 10 pages. Interesting stuff. Yeah, that was a fun film. I'm excited to continue this, and I have a feeling as soon as Billy Wilder month is over, I'm going to continue watching Billy Wilder. So
I'll give you some recommendations, I'm sure.
Yeah. Fun stuff. Anything else to add on this?
No, I think we got it.